This is Dr. Feast Price, and I'd like to talk with you about ethical and legal issues in group counseling. There are both there are ethical, legal, and clinical issues as it relates to the provision of services in a group context. When we talk about ethical issues, we're talking specifically about standards that govern the conduct of professional members. When we speak of legal issues, it has to do with the minimum standards that society will tolerate, which reinforced by rules of law at the local, state, or federal level. Whenever we violate our legal standards or our laws, then we may have consequences that are consistent with incarceration or fines or the loss of licenses. So when we might function within the minimum standards, but we might have violations of ethical standards, then again, we can lose our license or we can have our license suspended. Um, there are sometimes clinical issues that pertain to our professional judgment that enforces us to act in accordance with both ethical and legal mandates. And so, in order to maintain our license, not have it suspended, not go to jail or be imprisoned for the services that we provide, it's important that we understand the ethical, legal, as well as clinical issues regarding the services that we provide. Ethics in group therapy. Knowledge of ethics is as essential as psychological knowledge and skills. And so while it's important that we have knowledge and skills to be clinicians, we have to make sure that we have the ethics, because if we have one without the other, we are not functioning to the best of our abilities. So to have the knowledge and the skills without knowing the proper ethics means that we can negatively impact our clients. In like manner, if you know all the ethics and you don't have the knowledge and the skills, then it's very difficult for you to positively impact the lives of the persons with whom you serve. So, the ethical group psychotherapist is an individual in possession of ethical and legal knowledge, technical skills, and personal qualities predisposing him or her to strive to achieve moral excellence in his or her group psychotherapy practice. Without knowledge and skill, the best intended group psychotherapist can make some serious mistakes. And so it's from that vantage point that we want to make sure that you have not only some of the knowledge and skills, but also the ethical and legal knowledge and technical skills, as well as personal qualities that are necessary to meeting the needs of persons within the group context. So, where it all begins in terms of the ethical practice has to do with groups that have the potential for great benefit and to do no harm. So, at the core, at the crux of what we do as group therapists, we want to provide great benefit and to do no harm to our clients. We also want a high level of consciousness, both personally as well as professionally. We want to maintain personal integrity, which means that we maintain healthy boundaries. We also want to be free from personal biases. We all have life experiences that shape the lenses through which we see the world, but to the extent that we're aware means that we can minimize any personal biases that might exist. And we want to use decision-making styles that are most effective for those with whom we serve. So the Code of Ethics provide a guide by which we are to use in our ethical practices. So our Code of Ethics is what is our roadmap that guides us in working with persons in a group context. So I want to just briefly highlight the fact that there are relevant codes of ethics that are most relevant when working in a group context, and I'll be referring to information that has been provided to these various codes of of conduct. But just to briefly review, we'll be paying attention to some of the information in the Code of Ethics as it relates to the American Counseling Association, the ethical principles of psychologists and the Code of Conduct, and that's the APA, the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy, as well as the Codes of Ethics for the National Association of Social Workers. And so many of the codes of conduct have some overlapping qualities, but it's important that we recognize that there are myriad codes of conduct that are in place to ensure the ethical practice in group therapy. So as it relates to some of the ethical issues, it's important that you have informed consent with the group members. So persons are there because they choose to be there. And so it's important that before the group even begins, you meet with your clients and you tell them exactly what the group is about, what is to be expected, so they can make an informed choice about whether they would like to participate in the group process. It is also important that with involuntary members, that they too understand the group process. While they may not have the opportunity to withdraw at their will, it is important that they understand what the group process entails. We know that when there is involuntary membership, so court mandated group participation, whether it be for substance abuse, anger management, domestic violence, or even child abuse issues, we know that there is a different dynamic that exists among participants that come involuntarily. And so you want to make sure that you, to the extent possible, prepare the members, the involuntary members, for the group process. There's a freedom to withdraw from a group. Even persons that come to group involuntarily, they too are free to withdraw. However, there are consequences associated with their withdrawal. But all members are free to withdraw from the group process, whether they're voluntary or involuntary. However, as stated already, for members that choose to withdraw prematurely, they will have certain consequences that will be mandated by other entities besides for ourselves, but they too are free to withdraw. They are not forced to be in a group if they choose not to participate. There are some psychological risks for group members. There can be a misuse of power. And so we've already talked about the different kinds of powers that exist within the group setting. There are different kinds of leadership styles, but it's important that as group leaders that there is no misuse of power, not by the group leader or by group members. Self-disclosure is a part of the group process, and so it's important when you give information to group members prior to the start of group that they understand that in a group context, self-disclosure is required. There is a need to maintain confidentiality. While as group leaders, we are governed through our ethical code of conduct to maintain confidentiality. It is not the same for group members, so you want to talk with them about the importance of maintaining confidentiality, the fact that the strength of the group rests upon their ability to be able to share information within the group and that the information be held in confidence. You also want to talk with the group members so that they understand that there are parameters or consequences when they choose not to respect the confidences of their group members. So they might be withdrawn from the group, or they might just have discussions among the group members about whether they should stay in and what the consequences should be. But they definitely should understand the fact that confidentiality is a major issue as it relates to the group context. There's also the risk of scapegoating, where negative attention and energies are placed on one group member because sometimes in groups can be difficult, and members would rather place attention on other issues or individuals rather than focusing on themselves. And so as skilled clinicians, we have to make sure that we are paying attention to the group context to ensure that we avoid opportunities for scapegoating among group members. Confrontation is always a possibility. I know among group leaders, it's important that members are confronted when they are presenting with behaviors or they're saying things that are counterproductive to their success in the group. However, there are also confrontations that might exist among group members because, groups are different and members are different, and sometimes issues arise and problems occur. So confrontation is sometimes a part of the group context as well. So we talked about informed consent, and just to elaborate on exactly what informed consent is, Fallon identified informed consent as a process of presenting basic information about group treatment to individuals to enable them to make rational decisions about whether to enter and how to participate in a group. This is believed to be an ongoing process. So once you've provided them with information prior to the group beginning, there are still times in which you will have to provide additional information about the group context, what is involved, and the importance of participating. There should be a disclosure statement that talks about the therapist qualifications. So you tell what your qualifications are, some of the techniques that are often used. I always share with my consumers that I'm a cognitive behaviorist, and as such, there are times when we will role play and we will do different kinds of techniques like the empty chair technique by opportunities, which are opportunities to bring about broader learning and understanding of key issues that exist within the group context. You also want to let the group know that there are risks as well as benefits of participating in the group, and we've talked already about what some of the risks are in the group context. There might be policies regarding appointments and fees and insurance. Sometimes it's important to allow group members to develop their own rules of the group, their group guidelines. And also you want to talk with them about the nature and limits of confidentiality. Information should also be conveyed in a timely manner. And so it's important to provide some of this information prior to the group beginning, but also there is a need to sometimes revisit some of this information as the group proceeds. So I'd like to talk with you about some of the best practices, some of the guidelines for ethics and best practices that exist in the group context. And so the following information should be provided to group members in writing. So you might want to just develop a sheet that has relevant information that you can not only discuss with the client but provide to them as well. So the information, there should be information on the nature, the purposes and the goals of the group. You should provide them with a little blurb about confidentiality and expectations to be confident and to hold information that others share within the group context in confidence. Talk a little bit about the leader's theoretical orientation, group services that can be provided, the roles and responsibilities of the group members and leaders, as well as the qualifications of the group leader. And so if you provide this information in written form, the group members will have this information to refer to at a later time. However, it is encouraged that you revisit the information as the need arises. As it relates to confidentiality in a group, it's really important that you recognize that while as the group leader, you have a responsibility to maintain confidentiality of any information that is discussed in the group context. However, there is no ethical or legal implications for group members as it relates to confidentiality. So, as the group leader, there can be issues related to your license associated with the violation of confidentiality, and you can also be sued by your clients because of confidentiality. However, group members are not held to the same standard, but nevertheless, you want to encourage them to respect confidentiality, and you want to impress upon them how the group will be diluted if information that is discussed in the group is not held in the strictest confidence. So there are ethical and legal dimensions of confidentiality because what clients discuss in a group context is considered privileged communication. So if a judge orders you to divulge information that was discussed in a group, you can communicate that you are in a status of privileged communication, which should limit your requirement to provide information. However, for clients that are there through involuntary involvement, their information may be shared with legal authorities, and so it's important even to let them know that when it's for an involuntary nature, you want to let them know that some information may be required to be shared because of the nature of the relationship and why they're in the group context. But typically they don't want the particulars. They want to know whether the person is participating, whether they're actively engaged, and whether or not there is some benefit that's coming out of the group context. There's a multicultural dimension of confidentiality. There is also confidentiality of minors in groups, as well as a summary of guidelines regarding confidentiality. So, in what comes ahead, I will also discuss some of the issues related to some of what is highlighted here. So the role of the group leader is to ensure that there are ethical aspects of working with values. We know that there are certain values associated with working in the group context, and one of those values is that in order for people in the group context to feel comfortable sharing, it has to be an environment where they feel comfortable, they feel safe, and they believe that the information shared will be held in the strictest confidence. So one of the values that must permeate the group setting is that information that is discussed in the group will remain in the group. So that's one of those ethical aspects of a working group, and one of the values that's associated with it. Dealing with conflicts of values and soft altruism, what we know is that conflicts will occur. So there are times when, as group leaders, you may be faced with ethical issues over sharp differences between your own values and certain values of your group. And so, for example, you might have members from some cultural groups that may use physical punishment to ensure obedience or conformity for their children, and that could be consistent with their cultural values. But you might struggle to acknowledge that their values of punishment as being something that's normal within that group is different from your own values. And so in such situations, researchers suggest that conflicts might exist, and it's referred to as soft altruism, which means that All cultures share some basic universal values. So you look for the values and you engage in those values that you share, and then you can respectfully dialogue and clarify some of the differences that exist between your own values and as well as the values that your clients present with. Because remember, in therapy, one of the things that is consistent in therapy is that in group therapy is an opportunity to expand the knowledge base of your clients. And so sometimes there is a difference between your worldview and your way of looking at things or doing things as well as that of your clients. And so when that occurs, then you want to recognize that you can learn from each other and you can help to expand the knowledge base of your clients. So some of the things that they may have been doing, they might consider alternative ways of behaving. There's also competence and training issues associated with being an effective group leader. And so you want to always think about what kinds of clients you're capable of working with. What are your areas of expertise? And if you don't have the expertise needed to work with a particular kind of client or client base, that you either get the skills and expertise needed, you get the supervision, or you refer the clients or the group members to other experts that might have the knowledge base to adequately meet their needs. You also want to think about what techniques do you handle well. Some people are able to handle conflicts well, and there are others that they might feel less comfortable with certain kinds of populations or certain kinds of group members, and so or certain kinds of populations. So you have to ask yourself critical questions about the techniques that you can do well, the kinds of clients that you are comfortable working with, how far can you go with clients. You have to really understand boundaries and limitations. It's always, always, always important to consult with other professionals about clients. We cannot function in a vacuum. Research shows that therapists that sometimes commit the biggest ethical violations are those that are working in isolation and they don't have the support of other professionals. So you definitely want to make sure that you're working with other individuals. And you also want to understand when you should refer clients to someone else because you might have limited skills and abilities to meet their needs. So some of the best practices that have been identified by researchers are, number one, remain current and increase your knowledge base and skill competencies. And that's why we have continuing education credits. That's why any accrediting body will require that you attend workshops or go to take courses and just expand your knowledge base so that you can remain current and be able to effectively meet the needs of the consumers with whom you work. Be open to getting professional assistance for your own personal problems and conflicts. There are times when situations might happen in our own lives as professionals, and we will have to seek the expertise of mental health treatment providers as well. And so it's important that we get the help we need so that we can provide the services that we are required to provide as treatment providers. And we always want to utilize our colleagues for consultations and supervision because it helps us to make sure that we remain ethical in our treatment standings and that we are not becoming enmeshed with our clients or blurring the boundaries that we've established. So there are guidelines for ethical and legal practice, and among those guidelines, legal liability and malpractice insurance is a must. Some agencies require that you have a $1 million policy, and some expect higher. And so if you are going to be a practitioner, you definitely want to make sure that you have liability and malpractice insurance, because if you don't, then it can really negatively impact all your personal assets. So it's one of those ways to just protect yourself, and it also shows that you are a responsible practitioner. You wouldn't drive a car without health insurance, without car insurance, and we wouldn't, be without medical insurance. And so in like manner, you definitely would not want to be without legal liability and malpractice insurance. There are also legal safeguards for group practitioners. You want to take time and care in screening candidates for the group. And if persons are not appropriate for the group, you want to refer them to other groups because it'll save you a lot of problems later on. You want to provide information before the group to prepare the members so they are informed before the groups begin. You want to obtain written consent when needed, particularly if information will be shared. You want to keep records. Every group setting requires that you keep records on some of the generalities that occurred in the group, major topics covered, as well as how the group is progressing. You want to know some of the legal requirements. You want to know the legal requirement of confidentiality. You want to restrict your scope and practice. We can't be all things to all people. You want to be aware of state laws and ethical guidelines. Consult. It keeps you from making, ethical issues and becoming overly enmeshed. Making sure you have healthy boundaries. And you also want to have a clear standard of treatment. You want to have a theoretical framework that governs your treatment that you provide to the consumers or to your members. There are also legal safeguards that goes on with number 10. You want to document reasons for termination and referrals. Be careful with making promises. Do not engage in sexual relationships. Assess the general progress of your group. Make contacts that specifies the employer's legal liability. Learn how to assess and intervene in cases. Be alert to when to refer. Remain alert to your own personal reactions. Be aware of your own needs. Incorporate established ethical standards. Attend risk management workshops. And always have malpractice insurance. So what I have provided you with is a brief overview of ethical, legal, and clinical issues regarding serving as a group counselor or group leader. And I hope you give some great thought and consideration to what was discussed. The highlights that I really want to emphasize is number 1, malpractice insurance. Number 2, as professionals, you definitely want to consult with others and make sure you have healthy boundaries, know when to refer, and make sure you always get additional training and expertise needed to meet the needs of those with whom you serve. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you found this lecture helpful.